Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer!
Zola! What a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it!
And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Shocking news as American leader is caught making long-term commitment to racist organization. But enough about Christian Pulisic's move to Chelsea. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, dark day for American fans of the beautiful game because Christian Pulisic is now at Chelsea. And, well, he's not there yet. He will be next season. And it's terrible. The only thing I can hope is that it means that Eden Hazard is leaving. We'll see. Fingers crossed. In any event, Tim's still not here. Still in Brazil. Presumably, they will let him back into the UK, and he will want to come back so we can have him on the podcast at a future date. We should be getting match preview videos from him on Patreon again starting shortly, and all kinds of new Patreon content in 2019. So happy New Year, everyone. Happy 2019. We're going to be doing some video content because, you know, obviously the one thing this podcast is missing is our beautiful faces. But don't worry, that'll be remedied. It's all coming. In any event, I should introduce the guest. That's the professional thing to do. So Paul is here. He's on Twitter at PosInMyPants. Hello, Pos.
Yeah, no rush. Woohoo!
And Clive's on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Welcome back, Clive.
Hello.
Can't just keep missing podcasts, buddy. You're the glue that keeps this shit together. Yeah.
I think I missed like 2 all year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my point. I mean, come on. Well, let's be clear. You haven't done a single one this year. This is your first. So
okay.
So far, so good. You got a 100% record. Hey, we've got a game to discuss, and what an interesting one because we won it 4-1, and yet I find that there are still things I can probably complain about. I don't know. We'll certainly give it a shot. But let's start with this. So, Paul, you know, we knew that Fulham were not going to be great defensively. We knew that we should be able to tear them apart pretty easily. This is arguably the easiest game of the Premier League season for us, at home to the worst defensive side in the league. Emery still, you know, opted for maybe what you might argue a slightly more conservative setup, going with the 3 at the back and the 2 center mids. I mean, he did play Aubameyang and Lacazette together, but only Iwobi to stitch them together. Now, we'll come to Iwobi's performance because I thought it was a very interesting one, but did you feel when you saw the lineup that, you know, Emery just needs to sort of say fuck it and go for it a little more, or were you fine with it?
I guess so. Maybe it was a reaction to the last game, but I think he got the lineups the wrong way around, or the formations the wrong way around. I would have played 3 at the back against Liverpool with perfect hindsight, but I think I'm on record as saying that before the Anfield game, and you could afford to play 2 at the back in this game, but maybe having got graped at Anfield, we were a little tender at the back there, and so he went for a little conservativeness. I mean, the one thing it does give you with 3 at the back, everything's a trade-off. The one thing it did allow us to do was to get wing backs forward, to give some protection to Kolasinac and Maitland-Niles to get up there and get some crosses in, and give support to Iwobi on his side. And I mean, the other interesting thing is Aubameyang on the right, which I'm sure we'll talk along the way because he's normally been played on the left of that 3. So it did provide some support. Sometimes being a little bit more conservative can make you more progressive and attacking in other ways. So everything's a trade-off. So I think we saw some of that playing out in this game against Fulham. But if I had to choose playing 3 at the back in this game or the previous game, it seems we might have got them slightly flip-flopped.
Yeah, and he did give Torreira a rest, at least for part of the game, which, you know, I think was certainly warranted on the basis of what's looked like some leggy performances and a pretty rough outing at Anfield. It gave Matteo Guendouzi yet another chance to start in the center of the midfield, and he had an interesting performance himself. You know, a lot of personality, a lot of desire for the ball. Played that one gorgeous line-breaking ball, through ball right into Aubameyang that sent him in, and for one of the many, many chances he did not score. He did score a goal in the end. But we can come to that in a minute. I think, you know, Clive, the question then is, if we did set up more conservatively, it certainly didn't result in a defensively sound experience, at least for the first half. I mean, Fulham cut us open quite easily on a few occasions. Are you starting to wonder why we can't seem to keep anybody out?
I think a lot of it is to do with our defensive communication. We're not talking to each other, so we got probably our best 3 names if Holding injured. Our most experienced three names at centre-back, and we can debate their state of fitness. But, they're probably our most experienced three names. But they just defended like three people that are used to leading, but actually they are not helping each other. So there is no leader, but they're all trying to almost perform individual leadership type roles, but without really communicating to each other. And it was simple communication issues, situations like when Guendouzi and Xhaka were caught square, people pass through the middle of them, Socrates steps out, the other two just stand there, line is zigzagged, they run through. No offside, we're running back towards our goal looking old and slow. It's just basic communication, not defining the roles properly. If you do press out, then the other two should cover around and drop off, just in case the worst thing will happen. It's just deciding about what you want to do, and the communication just looked a little bit lumpy and rigid, and so we looked lumpy and rigid accordingly, and that's against a team that we didn't really respect that much, if I'm honest. If you look around at some of the performances, they were very patchy, and that tells you that the team was not dialed in. But there's a bigger question here, Elliot. I don't know if I'm allowed to sort of go on a little bit longer. But
yeah, I mean, you are, as long as you then don't make fun of me if I interrupt you.
Oh, you know what? I fully expect it.
Okay, then good. Yeah, then we're in alignment here.
You will help me with, with my thought process.
Maybe you saying this next thing will help me think of what's next to ask, because I literally have no idea what we're going to talk about, so it's perfect.
But trust me, after I finish this, you will have plenty to ask.
I'll just hit stop and publish. It'll be fine. Let's go.
Right, so also, I had a bit of time to think after not being on the pod, right? So I've been trying to exercise, trying to keep Christmas at bay, and in my garage I have a watt bike, and I have all of our recent games taped, and so I watched them. Right, so I thought I watched 4 games. Right, so I watched the second half of Liverpool, the league game, and Spurs league game, and then I watched the Liverpool away game and Spurs in the Carabao Cup. And the differences were quite marked. Right, so the intensity of the first 2 games where we were successful, particularly in centre midfield, was significantly different. And what it didn't allow people to get their heads up, and didn't allow people to play the ball into us. And we were incredibly forceful in both games. And a lot of it is about Arsenal winning the battle in centre midfield and going forward in any which way we liked. It wasn't always successful, but we looked purposeful. We had issues at the back, but our intent to dominate and go forward from that centre midfield spot, particularly with Xhaka and Traore in both those games, was outstanding. Now, what people have done since then is they've started to recognise that Arsenal have changed in centre midfield. They have a player in there that can dominate the most facets of the game, and it's allowing Xhaka to also play better. And if you add in supplementary players like Mkhitaryan and Iwobi and Guendouzi, Arsenal are not being killed in centre midfield. That was until recently, where teams have analysed us. And they have looked at our centre midfield and thought, well, no, we've got to stop that. We've got to start pressing much more aggressively. We've got to start standing in lines, standing in passing lanes, and making sure they can't play through there and out to the wide areas with Kolasinac, Iwobi, Mkhitaryan, Bellerin, that connection, and get chances into our box. So they are crowding the middle. They are smashing us from all different angles. And when they win it, they are setting runners away. So if you look at the Spurs second game, where Kane was quite well marshalled by Socrates. In the second game, Kane didn't play. They played Lucas Moura, Son, Dele Alli, running through our lines. As soon as they win it, bang, run straight through. And now you're saying to our defenders, how good is your communication? How good is your starting position? Are you ready to run backwards? And we don't like to. Right, and so they're running through Gus and getting chances one-on-one. That was happening early in the season as well, by the way, Watford and Everton. And then the same for Liverpool. Obviously, we all know their front four. They dropped Shaqiri into centre midfield, and they went bang, hit us, quick transitions, into Mane, into Salah. We all know the rest. Diagonals across our box, make us run backwards, and we looked old and slow. Mm-hmm. And so our strength of previous weeks, the thing that got me excited massively was the change in our centre midfield, the upgrade in that area, the fact that we were now dominating teams and controlling games, particularly in the later stages of the game, and really taking teams on transition is now being done to us. We are now being run backwards. So this is what a team has to solve now. So we've been analysed, right? We've been analysed. So what's next for us? We need to break that phase, and the only way to break that phase is to have ball-carrying midfielders. And we don't have any. We have one. His name's Iwobi. The rest of them are passers or runabouters. You see what I mean? So we've lost Mkhitaryan, another one who could carry, and people dismiss him, but we weren't getting dominated in midfield when he was there because he's physical, he's available, and he drives. He breaks lines, he makes people adjust and step back. He's not there. Suddenly we've taken out that extra connector. Now we're all looking at Alex Iwobi, and I'm sure you'll get to him, so I won't go down that path. I won't go down that path. Right? So what's happening when you watch a team, when you watch your own team, we all know them and love them dearly. We are now got problems to fix, and we can't fix them because we haven't got the right type of player. We haven't got the ball carrying set midfield. When we have a high line, we haven't got sprinters running backwards. So we can't fix the problems that we've now got to create, now been created for us. We've got one ball carrier, and our defenders are looking a little bit slow when people get their heads up and run us back. Our back line is not straight to play the offside. So we're indecisive, and we're looking indecisive defensively. So the great thing about football is that teams work you out. And the best players are the ones that can help you solve problems. And a lot of our players, I'm afraid, can only play one way. And some of those players are some of our star players. They are great when the game is suited to them. When the game is not suited to them, they are inconsequential. And that's what we have to think about when we're judging players. Judge a player based on how many problems he can solve for you on the pitch, how rounded is his game. And it is really interesting. Two players that we debate, in Iwobi and Maitland-Niles, young players that we debate, in a game where we were stretched physically, really pushed hard, the two players that come out with their heads held up were the two that could carry, that could run both ways, and that could drive and make Liverpool think physically. And that, my friends, is where the game is going. At the top 6 games, it's all about how you move, how you transition, how you carry. And this is the problem for us. There are different types of games in the Premier League. There are top 6 games and there are the rest. And in top 6 games, you find out exactly what you got. And all this BS we chat about our players, rubbish. Judge them in the top 6 games and see where they can go and see how far they can stretch and see how far their ceilings are. Because that's when you find out what people have got. And I think... give me a little bit of time to think about it. I think we've been given a real good, clear message post the Spurs game, in particular, that we got some problems to solve about the type of players that we buy and purchase to allow us to fix problems on the pitch that the other top 6 teams are going to provide us going forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, God forbid you ever had a lot of time to think about it, because I'd hate to see how much you'd come up with. I mean, with just a little time to think about it, that was as informative as it was comprehensive. I think I agree with a lot of it. There's a lot there. And look, one of the things that I maybe disagree with slightly is that every player needs to be able to solve multiple problems for you. I think you can
Not every player.
Yeah.
You should be buying players that make sure that can allow you to solve those problems as they're presented to you.
Yeah.
The best teams have those problem solvers.
Yeah, because
right?
look, I think you can have specialist players who are, if they're good enough at one thing, and I mean, if they're only going to be good at one thing, they got to be really good at one thing. But like, you can have an Aubameyang, for example, who's really good at one thing, and that's getting on the end of chances. You can have a player who's really good at dribbling and crossing the ball. I mean, there are specialists. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo was really good at scoring. It turns out that's really important.
Can I crystallize that thought a little bit further then? Because you have players.
Paul, you got anything going on today? Just chill out. It'll be fine. Cool your chest.
No, but while Clive's answering, I'm interested in his thoughts on Guendouzi as a ball carrying midfielder. But anyway, back to Clive.
So, Elliot, your point is absolutely spot on, right? And you often find that players that are on the exterior of your team, they have to have certain skill sets, right? So Aubameyang being an exterior player, the fact he can run in behind, the fact his movement is very hard to track, superb. Maybe I'm talking more about the interior players.
Sure, that makes sense to me.
Where the brain of the game is. You got to have players that can do different types of things. And I think we've got a situation where potentially we have passers, we don't have carriers, we don't have all the sprinters we need to go and press the game. We have developing players in that facet, but I think that's what we need, more of an all-round interior agility, speed, sprinting speed, and passing abilities. And we have some of all of the above.
No, we had
But we
Santi
don't
Cazorla
have
for
enough.
about a couple of healthy seasons. We missed that.
And then some would say he can't defend, right? So we have some, but neither could David Silva, right? But they've improved that, and he's become an all-round player. Same they've done with Kevin De Bruyne, and this is what's happening at the top end of the game. You're developing those types of players, and we're being presented with that problem. And unfortunately, we haven't got enough of those players either fit or in the right stage of their development to allow us to say, okay, you're going to stand in our passing lanes. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to step you. I'm going to run straight through you. I'm going to make you run backwards. I'm running through your centre mid onto your back four and see what you've got. Right? And we've got one player doing that at the moment, and we are debating his quality, shall we say. And we need more of that.
So let's get into that, Paul, because I think it is a big talking point from this game. Look, Emery set us up. One thing that has been frustrating to me a little bit with Emery football lately that I've been noticing is there's not a lot of linking between the lines, that the lines seem very separated at times. And so, in this game, we played with Lacazette and Aubameyang up front, and really the only guy dropping in and linking the lines was Iwobi. And he had arguably his best game of the season, at least in a half. He had his best half of the season, the first half. I thought the second half was a little more quintessentially Iwobi in that, there were some passes that went astray and final balls that went wrong. I have a suspicion, when you look at Iwobi radars, very good in XG buildup, very good in XG chain, very good in final third entries, virtually no shots, virtually no shot assists, virtually no XG, virtually no goals. Is the reason that Iwobi is so polarizing, not that he isn't a good player with good skills, but that he's playing one of the forward positions in a team that needs end product there, and that's not really what he's suited to. I mean, should we begin to embrace Iwobi as what Clive is describing, a linking player, and would it be better suited for his development if we stop wishing end product onto a player that maybe is never going to have it?
Yeah. Look, when you look at Iwobi's stats, depending on which stats you look at, he's a very busy guy. When you watch him, you see he's always pushing towards the box. That's his thing. The issue with Iwobi is certain games and certain teams neutralize him entirely. So he's two kinds of games. His last two games have been very good, right? He was probably our one standout player at Anfield, which is a tough game. But I think they kind of let us have that part of it because they were doing so well everywhere else. But when a team neutralizes Iwobi, they seem to neutralize him entirely.
Or sometimes he neutralizes himself, just by letting the ball go under his foot or passing 6 inches off of where he needed to or dawdling on the ball too long. He's strong and he can beat a man, Paul. So and he has a burst. It's just, at 22, I'm not saying you need to be the finished article, but, you look at Serge Gnabry, for example. Serge Gnabry was never great for Arsenal. He didn't play that much, but there were signs that there was an electrifying goal scorer potentially in there. I'm not saying because of that he had a 10 or 15 or 20 goal season for us, but you could see it. What I'm saying with Iwobi is he has all these wonderful qualities, and we keep saying the electrifying goal scoring end product part will come. Well, if it's not going to come, should we just leverage the abilities we know he already has?
Yeah, but I think even the problem with that is that he literally has, like the last two games, if he played like that all the time, I'm not that worried about his end product because his end product is other people's end product. But if he plays like the other two games,
yes, mm-hmm.
Yeah, you look at the two or so games before that, we're all scratching our heads wondering, were we caught on record on a podcast upping this guy recently? And there's not a lot in between. He's literally totally neutralized in a game, or he generally has he's a dominant force making things happen. Obviously, part of that is Kolasinac getting forward, and therefore is Kolasinac been supported downfield. None of this happens in a vacuum. But there are certainly games where he seems pretty dominant, and other games in which teams match up against him, maybe put two on him, and he doesn't have that overlap. But he also doesn't solve the problem himself. So he doesn't give you a lot of in-between games, I don't think. And that's beyond the fact that, he's lacking a little confidence in front of goal, the tendency to lean back or to snatch at a shot or do something that has him put his head in his hands. I think he's young. I think we got to accept that. His good games are good enough that I can't understand why people just give up on him. I think they're only remembering the bad games, and there are people who do it the other way around.
I have a theory why people give up on him, by the way. We can get to that in a second.
Well, I think so I think he's a work in progress. The shame of it is that he's kind of our only option of that kind of player, unless we really start to rotate Ramsey back into our lineup, which seems like a very good idea to me, unless he's going somewhere right now. I don't think he will be. Mkhitaryan isn't back, they say, till February. February could be middle of February, which is 2 months before the end of the season. That's not very good. So I think we need a player to liven things up, because, even if he were playing at a high level, his high level, for the rest of the season, the boy's going to get tired at some stage, and we need options. So we've got a big vulnerability in that area. It was interesting to see Aubameyang from the right, and I think certain aspects of that. And the other kind of, I don't know what happened to my voice there.
You hit puberty listening to Clive's last contribution.
Yeah, I think Lacazette's been very interesting, even though he hasn't scored for a while. He did in this game. But he's been really good, real quality on the ball. So I don't know what the answer is, but it's not like the coach doesn't have some quality players in his squad, but he might yet again have to come up with a new lineup to do something interesting, because the players don't allow him to do what he was doing before. He's got Ozil, he's got Lacazette, Aubameyang, Iwobi, Ramsey. I mean, that's not too bad for 3 or 4 players that need to sit up front, but we just can't think of a lineup at the moment that works with them.
Yeah, I'll tell you this much. I mean, if I know stats and radars don't tell you everything, but if you just looked at a radar of Iwobi and his stats and said, tell me what position this guy plays, you'd say this is a really good central midfielder. You would not say this is a dynamic wide forward, because he's not. And I think wish casting goals and assists onto a guy that has no track record of producing it is unfair to the player. And you could say he's only 22. I mean, Lucas Torreira is 22, and we're expecting him to be midfield Jesus. And, Leroy Sané is 22, and you at least see that scintillating, electrifying talent that can, beat a man, has that pace, burst past into the box, score goals, get assists. And so the reason I think people give up on Iwobi is because he's being played in a position where he can only ever provide some of the things that position requires. I don't think that you can be a top 6. Well, you can be a top 6. I don't think you can be a top 4 team in the Premier League without a lot of goals in your side. And Aubameyang's a lot of goals. Lacazette adds some goals. I think you need a third guy. I think you have to have a third guy, and that guy is Iwobi. Iwobi's all-time top goal-scoring season for us is 3 goals. He's on 2 this season. He's on pace to shatter it. So, I mean, you can say that comes, and I know Tim Stillman's argument, he would be screaming at me right now, those skills come later.
Don't worry, I'm about to.
All right, well, let me say this. I don't care how young the player is. When you have a dynamic goal scorer in your team, I'm sorry, you see flashes of it. There is nothing about Iwobi that to me says there's a sleeping giant goal scorer in there. Sleeping giant player? Maybe so. And in some ways, not just sleeping. He had a great game. But, why can't you play a 4-3-3, Clive, where it's Torreira, Xhaka, and Iwobi, all right, and then have a real forward in the front line with those guys? Mkhitaryan is more of a real forward. Why can't it be, if you want to put, well, we don't have Reece Nelson. We don't really have a forward. We have Saka. I mean, we really have
you've answered your own.
Well, we need Welbeck, fine. But
you got Ramsey.
You could play Ramsey. Ramsey can score from there, or you could play Ozil, who maybe he doesn't want to play wide in a 4-3-3, but at least he'll drift in and out and slide the ball in and get some goals. I mean, is there a reason Iwobi needs to be a forward when he profiles and contributes the things that a midfielder in a 3 can give you that you've just said we lack?
Yeah, I don't disagree with a lot of what you just said, right? But it's not his choice. He's being played there, right?
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I'm saying, should we do it?
He is the pre-assist king, right? He is the Alex Iwobi pre-assist king. He's the one that moves people around, plays people in for the assist to them go and score, right? And that's where he's comfortable in that slot. So he is perfect as a third midfielder in the midfield 3, which we don't always play. Or he could potentially be the tip of a diamond in a diamond formation at the end, which I hoped he would have played more at the weekend. But they had him from the left and Aubameyang from the right. I'd like to see him behind the 2 strikers, who are almost 3 strikers anyway, and play that central role like Ramsey did versus Spurs. I think he's got a lot more transition with the ball, and he offers you things with the ball and can create wall passes and 1-2s, a little bit of creativity. His end product is very inconsistent. You're absolutely right, Elliot. He had a game of 2 halves. In the second half, I mean, there were some simple passes that he was just messing up and kicking the ball out, and you could hear the groans in the crowd. And I didn't go to this one, and I'm glad I didn't, because I think it would have ruined my New Year's, because the way we treat our young players is quite, I think it's becoming a brand of Arsenal fans, really, about how we treat our young players and our players, full stop. You know, how we debate them, how we...
Is he a young player?
Yeah, he's 21.
21.
Okay, 21, 22. To me, he's a young
22.
Player, right?
Once he's 22, he's no longer 21. That's how it works. It's a joke. It's a Twitter joke.
He's had 2-3 years in our first team, right? So let's look around, shall we? At similar players of similar ages. Let's look around at Ruben Loftus-Cheek at Chelsea. No one's asking him to go and play every single 3 days, right? And provide.
Leroy Sané is the same
level.
age. Lucas Torres.
He's a winger. He is a winger.
Well, he's a true winger.
Yeah, he is a. And let's be honest, right? He is a top level winger. This guy is special, right? He's already transferred for 38 million quid, and that was 2 years ago. So this is no one. He hasn't fallen off a tree. Right, so, and Iwobi is somebody that's come through our youth system, and we are giving lots of minutes to. And if you compare people like Loftus-Cheek, if you compare people like Harry Winks, for example, the way they are treated and the way they are given time is different to how we treat our players. And maybe I'm not as close to their fan group to know when they
might be part of it. That might be part of it.
Yeah, but the feeling that I get is we are very harsh on our young players. Maitland-Niles was just about to get it until he scored a goal and has been composed. The fact that he broke his leg and had like 2 or 3 starts, people were saying that he's too casual, he doesn't work hard enough, blah, 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 blah. Suddenly he scores a goal, has 2 good games, and everyone's off his back for a little while. Iwobi was just about to get it because he was tiring and he was flagging. He had a couple of games on the bench. He's come on Liverpool, come on this game. He's had 1.5 good games. And you know what? The debate's still there, but I just feel as though maybe I'm being a bit parental. And,
can I just give you one alternative proposal? That it may not be as related to age. Yeah, go ahead.
I do think, and I've said this there online actually, I do think we are a team that really need to think about our young players and how we can make up for the financial mess that we've gotten ourselves into. Because these young players are either going to be sold or part of our future. And not only that, other young players around the world are looking and seeing, is the Arsenal project like something they want to go to? Is the Arsenal the place they want to be at? And if it is a toxic, hostile place where young players do not get time, right? If the coaches want to give them time, great. But if the fans are not going to give them time, then sorry, they're not going to choose us over other teams that try and do the same thing, get young assets in and sell them on for more money. And we are all part of this picture. We are all part of this environment. And by the way, I'm not saying that young players should not deserve criticism. I've seen Guendouzi run himself into blind alleys, the way we do exactly the same thing. But it shouldn't be the primary thing that we drive back as part of our feedback. It should be part of a broader thinking and a broader picture. I know we try to do it on here, but when you look online, it doesn't feel the same. And it doesn't take much for fans to get in that herd mentality and start to criticise in mass numbers. And you end up in situations when a player is getting jeered for a bad pass when he's probably been our best player for the first hour of the game. And then he ends the game quite loosely and gets substituted. Now, I think we can do better than that. I really do. I think we can do better than that and make sure that his high moments are praised just as much as we kill his down moments. And I don't see the level of praise being consistent for when he has a really good moment, but I do see a level of vitriol when he has a indifferent game or inconsistent
I guess
game.
I think maybe that's survivorship bias or whatever it is. What I mean is that, like, we have on this podcast joked around that he's the breakout player of the season. He started off really hot. We talked about it a lot. I mean, here's where I would just disagree with you slightly, Clive, is that I don't think it is age so much. First of all, I think it is close question whether 22 is a young footballer anymore. Let me give you some 22-year-olds just quickly. Leroy Sané, Lucas Torreira, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Richarlison, Dele Alli, Marcus Rashford, Gabriel Jesus. That's from Matt Arsenal1 on Twitter. But I only point those out not to say that that's not elite company, but that there's 7 right there that are, thriving at 22 in the Premier League. Now, hang on just a second. The reason I think Iwobi comes in for criticism is not because we have no patience with young players. I think it is not a factor of age as much as it is how long he has been part of the first team. This is really his third, or more than that, but let's say third season of really being established as a regular first team player. And I think when you're in your third straight season of playing a lot of first team football, people stop looking at you as young prospect and just see you as first team regular. And so maybe that is unfair, but I think he has been in the first team a lot for long enough now that he's just viewed as part of the first team. We have a lot more to talk about. So I don't want to go into too far.
Thing?
Sure.
One more thing. I think sometimes because we're so close to these people, that we know them so intimately, that we know what their potential is, or we think we do. We think we know all the reasons why they have a good game or bad game, but we're not always sure, right? And sometimes you got to take yourself out and see how people view you and view your team. And I started to think about this when I listened to the Jurgen Klopp pre-Liverpool press conference, and he was talking about our team, and he mentioned Iwobi 4 or 5 times. And I thought, I've never heard an opposition manager do that. And that tells you that they were preparing for him. They were preparing for his drive. They were preparing for his transition. And he ended up having a really good game. They were concerned about him. Now, us Arsenal fans, we criticise the things that he doesn't do. And by the way, I say we, and I include myself in that, by the way. You know what I mean? I'm not still talking from my perch here.
Yeah, look, Pep Guardiola at Barcelona once said they were preparing for Theo Walcott, and he was the most dangerous player at Arsenal. So, it swings and roundabouts a little bit.
Okay, well, I can't say possibly was at the time. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and at that time, he was very difficult for Barcelona to stop, and that was the skill set he had, running off the ball in behind.
I just meant they can be good and they can cause a problem, and they can still be an incomplete player.
Yeah, but again, what it shows you that other people see the strengths of our players slightly differently to sometimes how we do. That's what I was trying to say, right? So I thought it's quite interesting that the Premier manager in the league at the moment was talking about him. He wasn't talking about any other players. He was talking about him because he recognises the skill set he has to drive and break coaching manuals, to create problems, to create duress. And those type of players break your manual because they're unpredictable. They can beat you off the dribble, they can step inside you, and they can drive and make you panic. And we need more of those types. And we can debate his quality, but it's player types I'm talking about. And Liverpool have them. City have them. Chelsea are developing them. And we have got to do the similar type thing.
Well, they just got Christian Pulisic to help with that too. Look,
exactly.
I don't disagree with that. I think, at some point, the team has to help the player define his career and become the player he can be. When Thierry Henry showed up as a mediocre winger from Juventus, I mean, mediocre is maybe over-egging it, but, Arsene Wenger looked at him and said, "You're a striker." And he was right. And we know what happened from there. Maybe it's going to take a manager looking at Alex Iwobi and saying, "No, you're not a wide forward. You're not. You're never going to be a 20-goal, 10-assist guy. But you could very well be one of the premier midfield ball carriers and final third entry guys in the world, and that's how we're going to use you. All you have to do is up your defensive energy a little bit, up your work rate just a little bit, get your engine where it needs to be, and you can be that player." And I just would love to see, because again, I would love to see this kid who's been at Arsenal since a kid thrive at Arsenal. I just want him to have a role that suits his tremendous skill set,
I think he's thriving more than we realise. And also, Elliot, if we have 2 wide forwards and he can play deeper more often, I think we'll see exactly what you're hoping to see. At the moment, he's got the skill set to play deeper, and he's also got the skill sets to play higher. We haven't got anyone at the moment who can play higher up there consistently and drive. We have passers or runabouters that play up there. We haven't got the connectors. We had one in Mkhitaryan, he's injured. Potentially, we tried Maitland-Niles in that role at Anfield. It seemed to go okay. I think he obviously faded with the team later on in the game. But we need more of those half-space players that can drive from in behind.
I got to wade in, guys.
Please.
Yeah,
it
please
would be
do.
wonderful if you did.
I'll keep it short. In this sense, I don't see what the problem is. I mean, he hasn't actually played as a wide forward. He's played as an attacking midfielder, interior. He uses one of his best skills is just the ball's at his foot, and he's moving his feet quickly, and he's pushing the guy backwards, or he's playing some quick connecting pass. If I'm a defender, I do not want fucking Alex Iwobi one-on-one with me on the edge of the box. Not because I think he's going to score, but I think he's going to make me look like a fool, laid off to somebody else who will score.
But he doesn't.
What, laid off to other people who score?
Yeah, he does not do that.
I think he's been involved in a lot of our goals.
He does not do that.
Look at his goal involvement.
I think I just saw a game where that's exactly what he did.
Let's put it this way. His XG assisted and his assists are very low. So, yes, he had a good game against defensively terrible Fulham, and I don't deny him the credit for that. What I'm saying is he is a great intermediate value, final third entry, beat a man in midfield kind of guy.
Didn't he do it at Anfield?
Didn't he do what at Anfield?
Create an assist.
Yeah, he did give an assist, and it's one of his 3 on the season.
Yeah, but what you see is in the game, I mean, was it not real? Was he not playing in his normal position?
We have a lot of history on the player. He has not. I mean, historically, the thing he's really good at is final third entries and the pre-assist and the ball before the ball. He is not historically a guy who gets in the box and delivers the killer ball, the final ball.
But we have seen games where he's been really good. Now, I don't really fucking care what he does in the game if he's been really good. He's being really good. And if he's creating shit for other people, I don't care. Or if he's creating shit for people who lay on the assist, I don't really care. I've seen games where he's really good. We all have. That's not a fucking illusion.
Of course not. I'm not saying it is. Look, hang on. I think you're misconstruing my point. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, I haven't finished my point, which is the games in which he's supported by Kolasinac or whoever coming on his outside are the games he's going to look really fucking good.
Yes, I agree with that, yes.
And the issues with Iwobi, he's not a complete player. He can't do it all on his own. But if you give him a structure in which he can be successful, getting wing backs forward or however he's getting some support, he'll look a whole lot better. I don't want him necessarily moved into a 3, though. I'll like to see that too. I think playing in that kind of two-man Iwobi Mkhitaryan kind of structure, some kind of diamond. There's lots of places where he can be basically an attacking midfielder on the edge of the box without him being defined as a wide forward. And I don't think we play him as a wide forward. So I don't think he's perfect. Look, and he's I think it's so. I think where I'm being misconstrued a little bit is what I'm saying is we have complained, all of us, that this is an imbalanced squad, and because it's imbalanced, it's a real problem for Emery. And so what I'm saying is not that we're not getting some decent contribution from Iwobi the way he's being used. I'm saying I think there's a way to make the squad feel more balanced, to get a more true end product player into one of those 3-ish front 3-ish roles.
I think we all agree with you, Elliot. I think we just haven't got that player at the club at the moment.
Well, why not? I mean, we had Mkhitaryan, who's not perfect, but you could play Aubameyang, Lacazette, and Mkhitaryan in a 4-3-3 and play Torreira, Xhaka, and Iwobi in the midfield 3, and maybe that gives you that player that can link. And again, I'm not picking Ozil in any of these sides, notice, because I don't know where we stand with that. You could pick Lacazette, Ozil, and Aubameyang in the front 3. You know what? We should move off this. There's a lot more to get to. I think we all sort of agree on Iwobi's qualities. We sort of disagree on where his most effective position is, and what we can all agree on is none of us have any decision-making power over it. So let's do this. Let's ease off some of the tension with a nice chemise, maybe a silk getup of some sort. That will certainly relax us all. Then we'll come back and talk about the actual game that this post-match podcast is covering right after this. Stay with us. Okay, it's time to tell you about our friends at enclosedlingerie.com. That's enclosed, ENCLOSED, lingerie, LINGERIE, enclosedlingerie.com. You're going to want to go there right now because they are offering you $35 off any gift of lingerie from their site using checkout code ARSENAL. Enclosed Lingerie is a lingerie of the month gift. Similar to beer of the month or flower of the month, but every month you are going to receive high-end luxury lingerie for your partner. This is something that you got to do. It enhances the intimacy and the closeness in your relationship. That doesn't happen on its own. It takes time, it takes energy and effort, and this shows real thoughtfulness. Plus, you don't have to wander around a department store sheepishly. You're getting something with a perfect fit guarantee, so size will never be an issue, and you're going to love giving this gift to your partner. I'm married, I have a toddler, I have a great relationship with my wife, but I have to admit that keeping that closeness is something you have to really focus on, especially as time goes by and your family grows. So this is something you should absolutely do for your loved one. Go to enclosedlingerie.com, enter Arsenal at checkout. You'll get $35 off any enclosed gift, and you're giving something that shows real thoughtfulness, that's unique, that's just for you and your partner. Go there now, enclosedlingerie.com, and enter Arsenal at checkout for $35 off your gift. Do it now. Okay, we're back, and hopefully that settled everything right down. All kidding aside, we go into every single game on every single podcast, and so I think it is fun sometimes to get a little more in-depth, a little more detailed on one debate, rather than just breaking down every pass, every stat, every detail of a single game, especially a game that is, let's face it, more of like a practice, a scrimmage, than a real game when you're playing Fulham at home. But we will get back into the game, and we'll start with Paul. Paul, Lacazette, I think he's been having good games, but not getting the goals, and the frustration's been etched on his face. The substitutions have frustrated him. This was an interesting one. He does get a goal. I thought he was really good for most of the game. He was put in once where maybe could have done better, but he hit it straight at the keeper, but he did get his goal. And then he gets subbed off, and I have to say, I'm willing to criticize Emery as much as anyone, but there's a difference between criticizing Emery on Twitter for this or that or on a podcast and booing a substitution, 6 months into his appointment. He gets booed for the Lacazette substitution. Now, Ramsey winds up scoring. The substitution looks brilliant, and Lacazette claps off, tries to G up the crowd and get them to support what's going on. So, I mean, how do you feel about Lacazette's game and also specifically his reaction to the crowd reaction to his substitution?
I think it's good. Maybe he had a come to Jesus moment with himself, or Aubameyang put a word in his ear at some stage, or him and Emery kind of have got on the same wavelength, and he's understood a little bit more of what's going on, because he did everybody a favor by taking the right attitude going off. He could have played it down the middle or thrown a sulky, but he was actually pretty positive about things. So fair credit to the lad, because obviously he can get a little moody. Generally, I think, so the last month or so where people were saying, yeah, he's kind of off his game or off his form because he hadn't scored, that wasn't my vibe with it. I think it was just how the breaks went. I think he's been really good. I've actually been kind of a little bit blown away by him this season. He's kind of a bit of a worldie with his touches and his play around the pitch, ever so clever. And I'm torn, because I'm definitely in the Aubameyang at centre forward camp. But geez, Pete, leaving Lacazette out when he's got so much class, especially given that we're short a few players at the moment, up the far end of the pitch there, you just want to find a way to get those two boys on the pitch. So I want to see a bit more of Aubameyang on the right and Lacazette up front. He's been class. The only thing that gives me pause about Lacazette is he drops into midfield to do good work, but man, he can give the ball away or drop you in it one way or another. He seems to find a way to do it kind of every game at the moment. I can't remember the particular moment in the Fulham game where I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, he's found a new way of doing it. But maybe he's just unlucky, but he has these passes that fucking drop us into it when he drops in to do good work in midfield. It's
I think back to, wasn't it the one against Chelsea or whatever, where he cost us a goal with a giveaway to no one, under no pressure?
Yeah, and I feel bad beating him up over it, because generally what he does when he drops in kind of helps us springboard in attack or whatever, but he does have those moments. So overall, some of the touches he's had recently are just so elegant. And there was where he rounded the guy in the box this time. I don't know if you remember that moment, but somehow he managed. He's speeded up. He's more physical. He's just class.
Maybe a little time out of starting every game has freshened him up a little bit. I mean, he's the one player who arguably should be feeling a little bit fresh this time of year, maybe?
Yeah. And then on the booing thing, I mean, what the fuck, everybody? Just shut the fuck up. This is all about Liverpool. And I think some of the, not all of the Iwobi stuff, but a bit of that, it's frustrated people looking for their opportunity to express their frustration. Shut the fuck up. Get behind the team. I'm sorry, with your professional coaching career and proven record behind you, that you don't approve of how things are going versus how you thought they should be going. Sorry, I didn't expect to be going on a rant right now, but shut the fuck up. Let the manager manage. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. We're in the first season, halfway through. We had a bad result at Anfield. Suck it up. I think the manager got Anfield totally wrong personally, but so fucking what? That's going to happen. So shut the fuck up.
And I have to admit, I agree with you. And look, I'm not prone to agreeing. I want to just make one thing clear, right? There is a bit of a different fan culture, I think, in the U.S. versus in England about how you support your team at the ground. Because, for example, Philadelphia fans, like Eagles fans in the NFL, they will boo. They literally booed Santa Claus. Like, they're famous for that. They will throw snowballs at their own players. Like, they will boo a team that's winning, by 4 touchdowns for not getting another touchdown. Like, booing is just, it's not the same taboo, if I can say it that way, here that it seems to be there. So I tend to be fine with booing because, like, look, if you're frustrated, you've had a few drinks, the team's kind of shit, you boo. Like, you're there for the experience. But, it's a new manager at home, not even halfway or just halfway into his first season. Yeah, I think that's a little rich. So I didn't love that.
And it has a totally different emotional impact on a player. Iwobi at the Emirates versus, some guy in American football gear, helmet, fucking miles away from the crowd, and it been part of the culture and the fun. It's just a different animal.
Yeah, no, I agree. And by the way, I mean, this was to the manager, right? So it's slightly different than doing a specific player. But look, I mean, we're a club that once booed Abue off the pitch after being a substitute. So it's going to happen. It's not pretty when it does going to happen. I mean, Clive, what do you think? The booing, the response, but also just Lacazette's performance, and maybe, just maybe, no matter how risky it is, and it is risky because we only have the two of them, the concept that Aubameyang and Lacazette just never look as good as when they're both playing together, and they need to play together.
Yeah, I like that front two. They're not looking as the chemistry, not looking as good as it previously did in the sunny autumn, shall we say, but you still want them on the pitch because that's where our talent is. I think the booing, I think maybe Lacazette's responses to being substituted previously opened the door to the fans to say, we're with you, we're going to give the manager some stick. And what he's actually done is embarrassed us because Lacazette then shut the door immediately with his reaction, which I thought was brilliant.
It was great, though. Shut it right down,
He shut it right down, was incredibly positive and supportive from the sideline when we scored the goals later on. And I'm thinking, brilliant, mate. You're self-aware. You're aware of what's happened. You're aware that maybe your disappointment's been caught on the camera. And you've now shut that door. And what it did, it made the people in the ground who were booing that substitution look absolutely clueless, right? Absolutely clueless. And by the way, we all get it wrong at times. I wasn't sure about young Cesc Fabregas. Thought it was rubbish.
Oh,
so there you go, right? So,
dear.
But hey,
that'll be in the spotlight down the road.
That's okay.
Get him off the pod now.
My mates always remind me of that, right? So, but I was a massive Patrick Vieira fan, so nothing could get in his way. But then you learn as you get older to say, well, actually, I have to open my mind up to different players and open my mind up to not watching the game through certain people's eyes only and watching the whole game. Lacazette, I'm a fan of him. If I'm brutally honest, I don't think he's looking as sharp as he did at the start of the year, and I don't think his execution is right where it was. He left a goal on the pitch for definite when he ran through in that right-hand corner of the penalty area. That's a Lacazette chance. Smash bottom corner. Keeper makes a save with his feet, I think, and they get away. So things like that. That's a 2-goal game for him normally. So he's left 1 goal on the pitch and he's come off after 70, 80 minutes, whatever it was. So, but I see a player that's we're going to need. He's fit, touch wood, and he will have his hot spot in the year. Much like the start of the year, Aubameyang was struggling a little bit. He was the one coming off. He was the one being on the bench. Lacazette carried us. He scored the goals. Now it's the other way around. I wish we had that third forward so we could keep 2 of them on the pitch, wherever that third forward is. We used to have one, and since then, we've been talking about these 2 guys together because we know we need them. We haven't got that third guy to keep the power down for the whole 90 minutes. And now we're calling our manager conservative because he's having to put on midfielders late in games to cover, to try to control games later on, to cover for the fact that we haven't got that third forward at the right age profile to drive on. The fact we've lost Welbeck, we talk about Iwobi as a third forward. The issue is we've lost Welbeck and we're asking other people to fill in, and we're judging based on what they're having to do more often than they would like to. And that's the problem. And we just need to either hang in there, wait for Mkhitaryan to come back, or we need to go and buy that player. And let's see what we do.
Yeah, I'd be very curious. I mean, we're going to do a special transfer window podcast over on Patreon. So, that's something, if you like that stuff and you want to sign up, we're going to talk about all the positions, all the rumors. We'll get into the most tenuous, ridiculous rumors. Yeah, that's going to be fun. And I mean, we will get into the really nitty gritty of like some guy on Twitter tweeted this once. Do you think it's real? Like, we're going to really dive into it. And Tim is probably going to host that one because that's his specialty. He loves that stuff. Paul, just let's do sort of rapid fire real quick here. First of all, Aubameyang gets another goal. He leads the league in goals, and yet could have had 4, maybe. Should have had 2 assists. One with his miss off the post to Ramsey, and help set up the one for Lacazette. So overall, is this just the player we have? And I think we all need to take a deep breath and realize like there's nothing wrong with a guy who gets 4 good chances and scores 1 every game.
Yeah, I don't think we were promised a guy with a perfect touch, a perfect finish, a complete striker. He's got superpowers in a number of areas. He'll get you a bag full of goals. He's the league's top scorer, or was. I think he still is.
He is.
And, he scores, he's got a 25% completion rate, which is extremely high, not because conversion rate, yeah. Not because he's a brilliant converter, but because he gets himself into brilliant positions, and he takes his share of them, but he misses his share of them. So he'll always leave goals on the table, but he'll always get into positions where he's putting goals on the table. I think this is who he is, as I understand it. Yeah,
and you look at certain chances, we say, oh, that's a bad miss, but built into the bad miss is some good play. So like the line-splitting pass by Guendouzi, which is a beautiful ball. Aubameyang makes a beautiful curved run, holds off the man with strength that I actually was surprised he had the strength to do it. An extra touch to get past him in a position to get a shot on goal, and then doesn't finish it. There's so much good work he does in that play. Doesn't get the finish there. But he winds up getting a goal later. Now, admittedly, that one was a little bit lucky. So, hey, Clive, one player who I thought had a really interesting game, I thought this was kind of a Rorschach test for Granit Xhaka Rorschach test, because he scores a goal. So you can be like, Xhaka had a great game. Lots of passes, scored a goal, great game. He also put us in the shit a ton of times. This was quintessential bad Granit Xhaka and good Granit Xhaka side by side. So let's look at the Rorschach test. For you, was this a nightmare Granit Xhaka game where he put us in the shit way too much for a DLP, or was this, great Granit Xhaka, touched the ball a ton, scored a goal?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both. I look at this area of the pitch a lot, right? Centre midfield is where I used to pretend to play, and so I look at those two, Guendouzi and Xhaka, a lot, and I saw numerous occasions when they were caught square, and I actually tweeted out they were having a bit of a personality dance-off, right? So by that I mean they're both players with ball-dominant personalities, and they were both on occasions wanting to be the player to dash and press and dash and receive it, and they were caught square too much, right? So they weren't deferring to each other, and that was a problem, right? So eventually Xhaka sort of settles in behind, and he has a strong presence. I like the way he plays. You can look at him and say, I love what you do, and then the moment he's put in a situation where you can see his weakness, your stomach just flips over, because you can see that he could be getting run, or you see he's not quite in position. But when he gets the ball, he fizzes the ball out and he hits someone's foot almost perfectly. You think, wow. He does outside of the foot cross in the second half look beautiful, and you just think you've got an array of talent, but he has got his weaknesses, obviously, around his mobility. If he's caught square, or he's caught in situations where he's not comfortable in wide spaces, and he recovers that by sliding in and doing big fouls and going to ground and getting sent off. We've seen it, right? We've seen it, but it doesn't mean you can't appreciate what he can do. Sometimes he gets his head down, and sometimes he loses it. Sometimes he loses his picture. Sometimes he just doesn't think, well, the ball's come and I stop it, and he's there for a pressing. In Europe, you just put your leg in front, you get the foul, much like Torreira did in the second half. That doesn't work in England. You get your whole body in front and get smashed to the floor, and they still say play on, right? You can't just look to the referee. You got to protect the ball properly, make sure you move it quickly. You can't just say to the referee, "Where's my foul?" Guendouzi does that a lot as well. I think it's a dangerous tactic. Socrates does it as well. I think it's a European style of playing. And in England, I'm sorry, mate, if someone makes a good intention for the ball and the referee fancies letting it go, he will let it go. And I think we got into those sort of situations. But he's a player I like a lot. I know I get criticism for liking him a lot. I like him from a coach's point of view, because he's one of those players you can trust. You can move him around. You can trust him. He's 7 out of 10 every week. He hasn't had an 8 or a 9 for a little while, but he's someone I think always fit, always available, always trustworthy to give you some form of direction and leadership, particularly when he's in centre midfield. And we all saw what happened when he wasn't there. We suddenly stopped winning games. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the proof of it. We suddenly stopped winning games.
No, I agree. I mean, look, the Granit Xhaka thing, this season for me has crystallized in my mind just how important he is for us and what his contribution adds up to in terms of, our build-up play functioning even a little bit. But the worry I've always had with Xhaka, and it was a worry against Fulham, is the ability to give the ball away, lose possession deep. Scott always posts the offensive value added numbers, right? And it combines, if you're not familiar with Scott's offensive value added, Scott's on Twitter, _that_crab. It combines a bunch of things: passing value added, positive pass, negative passing value, in other words, where you lost the ball, ball progression value, carry value, dribble value, dispossessed value, shot value, XG chain, XG buildup. And he combines all that. And leading this game was Aubameyang, just because his chances added up to so much XG chain. Iwobi was number 2, and his XG chain was through the roof. As we noted, he created three big chances. Granit Xhaka was number 3, and he's always right there near the top, but his negative pass value was minus 0.23, which is really pretty high. Not great. So I just, but
also, Elliot, with that sort of stat, we have to maybe add to it that he has the most touches. I believe he's had, since he signed, he's had the most passes in the Premiership, full stop.
Yes.
Right? So we're talking about somebody that has incredibly high pass statistics. So he's going to have a higher than normal error rate. Right, and so I think there's always context around these numbers. I think also I listened to you guys the other day on the podcast talking about our improvement, and we were talking about stats saying we got 1 point further on, and I think I read somewhere that we're +7 against the same opposition as we played last year. And it got me thinking, actually. I can see how other people listen to the podcast now, and I was arguing with you on my exercise bike, right? Even though I wasn't even to be heard. So I imagine people are arguing with us right now.
People are arguing with me perpetually, everywhere, all the time.
Well, I'll give you an example, right? Do you remember the 2-2 draw last year, where I think it's December 23rd, because I went to the game, Liverpool at home, when was it 2-2 or 3-3 in the end? Do you remember when Ozil scored 2 quick goals? It might have been 3-3, right? Do you remember that game where we literally were diabolical in the first half? We were 2-0 down. We came back. I went 3-2 up and ended up drawing 3-3. Unbelievable seesaw game. I think we were in control for about 10 minutes only, and we got maximum reward for it. Right? One of the most exciting games I've ever seen in my whole Arsenal watching life. Compare that game to this year, the 1-1. Right? And now, if you want to measure the improvement of this team, maybe those 2 games will signify it. We got a point in both games, but Liverpool were making defensive substitutions towards the end to hold on to that point. We were in control of that Liverpool home game for far longer periods we were in that 3-3 draw last year. And I think it's very difficult to measure the improvement of this team. We can look at all the stats, all the numbers, etc. But sometimes it's how you feel. We lost away to Liverpool last year in the league 4-0. This year we've lost 5-1, right? So there's no change there. Nothing to see here. But that Liverpool home games, those 2 games, maybe tells you the difference. We were much more competitive, much more in control for longer periods, and we were pushing for a win. At no point in that game last year, it's the luckiest 3-3 draw of all time. They smashed us, and we just happened to have a purple patch and do some amazing football and score 3 goals in quick succession that got us the point. And I think what I've seen this year from watching the team is an increased competitiveness in all games and a little bit more control for longer periods. It's nowhere near perfect, But therein lies my measure. Those 2 games are a significant measure for me. And this is a better Liverpool team this year than it was last year.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say is that, on that portion of the podcast, and nothing is better podcasting than relitigating the previous podcast, is just that some of the underlying metrics are a little concerning on the attacking half. And I would just love to see us have a little clearer identity about how we want to attack. Although maybe that identity is driven a lot by having Kolasinac available and Bellerin available and attacking down the wings. I think
absolutely
we are definitely in a position where their availability is arguably as important to our attack as the availability of players like Mkhitaryan, Iwobi, Aubameyang, Lacazette. Paul, I want to finish on Aaron Ramsey here. He comes in, he scores a very important goal at a very tenuous time of the match, ultimately making it safe and making the end really a laugher. But, he continues to, at least to me, look very committed on the pitch. I know that kind of stuff is hard to evaluate, and of course he should be committed. He's an Arsenal player. Rumors are that he, is potentially off to Juventus, on a free at the end of the season, that he is going to sign a pre-contract. I mean, first of all, what do you think of his cameo, and, how are you feeling about what looks to be the end of Aaron Ramsey, the all-time leading goal-scoring midfielder at Arsenal?
Yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack in that. Well, he came on and he smashed it, and it was sweetness, and you saw the enjoyment he got out of it. Look, the guy's got loads of character, so if anybody can play through the season despite the fact his eyes and his mind will start to drift to other places as it goes on, it'll be him. But we're all human, so it's definitely a risk that as we get to March and April, that his mind starts to go elsewhere. And maybe he's just a little bit more protective of himself than he would be. So it's not ideal, but maybe it gets us to where Mkhitaryan comes back. Now, we'll probably need all of them, but at least if you want to keep him busy enough and engaged enough so he feels part of it, but you probably don't want Ramsey playing every game anyway from a fitness standpoint. So you just hope he's going to have that he can do what most other players can't, which is stay focused, stay professional, and stay in the game. He's had so long at the club that it's really kind of it's sad that he's leaving. It's an opportunity on both sides, so it shouldn't be too sad, but it's definitely sad that this is how it will end up, that he's gone on a free. Very nice for his bank balance, but not the best statement about how it all wound up. It's just kind of, it's understandable on all sides, but it's just a little sad that a guy who, you throw around the word legend, is he a legend? Probably not, because we didn't win enough while he was here. But man, he's a bit of an icon at the club. He defines an era at the club, and he's never been anything other than class. Well, he's been a little dull in interviews, but he's always been class. Fucking great guy. Can't do anything but wish him the best. In the meantime, our problem is wishing us the best. I think he's going to help out. I think he can play a kind of a Mkhitaryan role to the right, but we haven't. The manager's kind of dipped a toe in and out. I think when we're pressing with the front three, he can play a role in that. We've seen the manager try to use him that way a few times. Against
Fulham, he played the role that he played the opening day against City, right? As sort of like a 10 with split forwards who he ran in between and triggered the press, kind of, sort of. Late runner into the box.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting options with him. The problem is we're halfway through the season and the manager's got a lot of interesting options to consider. No blueprints, no templates for what works in certain games. So the plus side is it's all up in the air, and Jesus, Aaron, we need you. So it'll be interesting to see what transpires over the next month or month and a half. But until Mkhitaryan's fully fit, I can't see that we're not going to use the heck out of him.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the good news is, I think, as you've said, that he is a player who, if we do use the heck out of him, will be fine with that. I mean, if you sign a pre-agreement, I don't know how that works, but, I don't know if that means they can back out of it if you do your Achilles or something like that. I mean, I imagine so.
Don't
probably.
Believe so.
No, well, so there you go. So maybe he can, he's got his money in the bank and he can play for us as hard as he wants and have a good farewell to a club that's been his home for most of his career. Clive, Final thoughts on Ramsey and his performance in this match and just sort of the future for our all-time leading scorer from midfield?
Yeah, I thought he did. I thought he did okay. I tried to stay away as much as I can from Ramsey type debates because I have a view, and it's not anything I can stand behind because everyone else has their view. I think I do think that what I do respect about him is his attitude. He's a professional, and he's always been that player. I do have issues around his style, as you know, but hey, that's just my personal preferences. But we can't deny his professionalism. He's given us 10, 11 years of his life, and that's not an easy thing to do. Right? And he was pushing for a big deal, and he didn't quite work out. And now he's going to get a big deal somewhere else. He's a bargain to somebody, even at 140 grand a week, and probably 10 million in his bin. That's probably similar numbers to what we had on the table for him, end to end. But in the end, Arsenal are not in position to sustain that deal, and probably because of the other deals that we have ongoing at the moment, and other deals that we probably want to add to the squad. And what we can't see as fans at the moment is tomorrow, how quickly that's coming, who's going to be in those roles when players go who are on big wages, and it's not just Ramsey, there are others waiting to go who are just earning pensions. And because we can't see tomorrow clearly, we can't see those players, we're holding on lovingly to the ones that we know, and we're remembering their best moments, and that's a fan's prerogative, right? So, but again, a player that comes on and did what he did against Spurs, you can't say anything but say, wow, that was fantastic for that period, and he really drove them back. And that is a classic Ramsey game where he actually doesn't do that much on the ball, but he's involved in big moments. And you turn away from the game, you look at Match of the Day, and you think, crikey, he's involved in 2 or 3 of our goals, but he did nothing else, and nothing else but being involved in goals. That's not a bad skill to have, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think the team is looking for something else, but it doesn't mean you can't respect what he actually has done for us and is doing for us.
You have to laugh because we've got a player in Aaron Ramsey we can't keep, who is leaving and is contributing. And then we have a player in Mesut Ozil who we can't get rid of, who is staying and isn't contributing. That's a bit glib, by the way. Please don't hate on me.
No, it's all aligned to the contracts, isn't it?
Yes, of course.
It's all aligned to the contracts. It's all aligned to the wage structure. And what Arsenal are going through, they're basically going through a financial restructure right now. And the only way they can do that is to chin the biggest players in the playground. And they have to. You can't start with the academy kids and reducing their contracts.
It doesn't make a dent.
They're your assets, right? Like any new boss coming to the firm, what they go for first? They go for the managing directors, didn't they? That's where your cost base is. So you got to go.
Thought about that before we gave Mesut Ozil 28 million a year, whatever.
Yeah, you would think the club would joined up, but they've only just joined up now. So we have a new club, new organisation, and this is the first window we're going to see them in action. And in the summer, and I am going to hold my judgment till after the summer, and I think we can say, who is this Arsenal? What are we all about? And I think then we can really judge the club as where we're going. I think we're bound to post some losses coming up. This pitch is going to get darker, and then we're going to see where we are, and hopefully the football results will mask it. But if it doesn't, I think we're going to have such an interesting January and summer to judge the club. And
there will be a podcast. That's a good segue. Podcast on Patreon. Whole podcast dedicated just to transfers. All the rumors, all the signings, all the non-signings, incomings, outgoings. You know what I meant. In any event, thank God we had Fulham. What a time to draw Fulham at home. Right after you get hammered at Anfield. You need a win. You get Fulham at home, and we got the win. Thank God. Chelsea have just drawn against Southampton, by the way, so that's a good result for us. They're going to be coming to the Emirates this month, so if we can get back on track, maybe, just maybe, this top 4 race could be interesting. Paul's on Twitter at Pause in My Pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you.
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. Give us a 5-star review. Write nasty things about that holiday vacationing son of a bitch, Tim. Thinks he can just go away to somewhere sunny and warm and enjoy his football on the television instead of sitting in cold, rainy
He looks way
Emirates.
too happy.
Yeah,
way too happy.
Drive me fucking nuts. Anyway, we love you. We appreciate you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Blackpool 0.